the violinist Eugene Fodor. You would think that the rigour and discipline of violin playing would serve as a protection from things like drug and alcohol addiction. But sadly, that is not always the case. The life of Paganini with his gambling and womanizing addictions is a case in point. Eugene Fodor certainly had a lot going for him. First and foremost, he was a student of Jascha Heifetz. Heifetz being perhaps the greatest violinist, some would even say the greatest musician who ever lived. So to have been taught and mentored by him was a tremendous privilege. But as well as Heifetz, Fodor was also taught by Ivan Galamian and Joseph Gingold. He took first prize in the Paganini competition in 1972, and then made history by entering and winning second prize in the Tchaikovsky competition in Moscow in 1974, which actually equated winning the first prize, since no first prize was awarded, the second prize being shared among 3 competitors. Here are comments by Fodor's mother, Antoinette Fodor. When he was little, aged 5, he begged for the violin when he saw his older brother John playing. We didn't know it then, but he had a genius IQ. He was an overactive child. By the time he was 11 or 12, he told us he was going to be a star. Of course, the discipline was more than ordinary, it had to be. The worst punishment we could give him for not practicing was to take the violin away from him. After a while, he would practice 5 or 6 hours a day without being told to. Eugene's father's name was Eugene Fodor Sr. Here's how Eugene Fodor described his first meeting with Jascha Heifetz. When he invited me to his house and I played for him, I was quite relaxed, and I played well. He was really very nice to me that day and invited me to join his class on a full scholarship. I always felt his closeness the entire time I was with him. Heifetz had a marvellous sense of humour. There was always a lightness, a boyishness underneath the grim exterior. I was never intimidated because I could feel the lightness bubbling up. It was one of the most enjoyable years of my life. My studies with Heifetz were an affirmation of the principles of solid technique, discipline and preparation that I had adopted early in life. Certainly glowing praise for his teacher, Heifetz. So, a brief summary of Eugene Fodor's life then. He was born in Denver, Colorado in 1950. His parents were both serious music lovers. He studied initially with Harold Whippler, an American violinist and teacher, from 1958 to 1968. Fodor's father was strict about practicing, and Whippler described Fodor as having exceptional talent and great, unusual understanding of music. He then went on to study at Juilliard School in New York City, at Indiana University, Bloomington, and the University of Southern California, where of course he studied with Heifetz. Fodor made his solo debut with the Denver Symphony Orchestra at the age of 10, playing the Max Bruch Violin Concerto No. 1. He began touring as a soloist as a teenager. He won the prizes we mentioned and signed a recording contract with RCA Red Seal. He was a guest on the Johnny Carson Show 15 times in total and was awarded the European Soloist Award, Prix Européen du Soliste, in January 1999. He played at the White House and many other accolades, so many during his very interesting life. So when did Fodor start to slide downhill? Well, an arrest for breaking and entering and drug possession on Martha's Vineyard in 1989 resulted in negative publicity. The events leading up to his arrest on July the 27th, 1989, in a vacant hotel room on Martha's Vineyard when he was charged with breaking and entering and possession of a controlled substance, cocaine, are as follows. He says that he had money to pay for the room, but because it was late at night with no hotel clerk on duty, and because he desperately needed to crash, he broke in. Fortunately, the great Jascha Heifetz had passed away in 1987, 2 years before his former student became engulfed in scandal. A Massachusetts court dropped the drug charge, citing him only for trespassing, a misdemeanor, on condition that he entered a drug rehabilitation program, which he did. But he had begun a lifelong battle against drug and alcohol addiction. He went through 2 divorces, but then remarried his first wife. He had 3 children, according to the LA Times, a boy and 2 girls, and 3 grandchildren. Then sadly he died from cirrhosis in Arlington County, Virginia, on February the 26th, 2011, at the age of 60. He had died in his sleep. Some further comments about this great talent, Eugene Fodor. In the 70s, he was a sensation. He was called the Mick Jagger of classical music and a cowboy fiddler. Young, handsome, and extremely talented, Fodor became the first American to win the top prize in the Soviet Union's prestigious Tchaikovsky competition. He had a special connection with horses, hence the name Cowboy Fiddler. As he grew up on a ranch in Denver, he could apparently stand on a horse. He also took up yoga. What did the critics say about Eugene Fodor? They said that he was a flashy player. Some thought that he was more style than substance. By his own admission, he could be cocky. One friend described him as a prickly person to be around at times, but did also say that he could be very generous at other times. His closest friends described him as difficult and irascible. And he was treated for liver failure, and his wife says he had stopped playing violin at that point. He had great pain around his music, she says. I couldn't play violin music around him without him crying. He felt his life had no value without music and without the great venues he'd performed in. He felt it had been ripped away from him. It was extremely painful. So what can we say in conclusion about Fodor? He was universally admired for his awe-inspiring violin technique. His playing had a brilliance to it, said violin maker Rick Maltzer. Fodor had few students, but one of them was violinist William Wolcott of Omaha, Nebraska, who had studied with Fodor in the mid-90s. Wolcott said of his studies with Fodor, "He gave me the mindset that the impossible is possible." Paganini, who wrote music that many violinists would classify as near impossible, was always one of Fodor's specialities, and he vigorously challenged those who would dismiss the music of Paganini as lacking substance. He actually on one occasion played Paganini's own 1742 Guarneri del Gesù, the Il Canone or the canon violin, in a rare concert of this nature that took place in San Francisco. He last performed in 2008, as far as I can tell. Besides his sister Deborah, Fodor is survived by his brother John Fodor, his children Dylan, Daniela and Lindsay Davis, and grandchildren Dylan and Christopher. So he was the Mick Jagger of classical music. In Fodor's own words, violin playing is special to me not only from the point of view of its technical scope, which is virtually limitless, but also for its song-like characteristics. The New York Times wrote an article entitled "From Tchaikovsky to Heroin, a Brilliant Violinist's Decline." But Fodor said about his parents that he had tried not to blame them for anything, and said that he bared no resentment to his parents for the course that his life had taken. He continued to perform, was still making recordings as late as 2003, but his career never fully recovered since that 1989 downfall. Personally, I'm a great fan of Eugene Fodor, not only because of my interest in him as a student or former student of Heifetz, but also because I acquired an LP of Fodor playing Chrysler, and instantly liked his sound, and just an excellent, a brilliant, if somewhat controversial player. So what is it that can cause a person at the pinnacle of success to fall from grace in this way and to become embroiled with scandal and addiction? This happens very often in rock and roll, but maybe less often in classical music, and I'm sure the reasons why this comes about are very complex and not easy to summarize in a sentence or two. Perhaps we'll consider this topic further with Michael Rabin, another tragic life story of a violinist who, as a young adult, began taking barbiturates to cope with anxiety before concerts. He developed a fear of falling off the stage and experienced stomach pains, became dependent on the pills, which were addictive and required larger doses to have the same effect, and withdrawal symptoms included loss of coordination. Ultimately, Michael Rabin would die from a fall at a very young age, about age 35. So why do stars seemingly on top of the world with lavish, fabulous lifestyles, wanting for nothing materially, with all the fame and glitz that comes with that, why do these people develop addiction problems? Well, there is a dark side to fame that can make coping with daily stress difficult. Celebrities experience daily unique stresses and complications that can negatively impact their mental health. This can lead to substance abuse as an unhealthy method of coping. Factors like significant stress, such as stage fright and pressures of show business, peer pressure, competition, public scrutiny, and exposure to alcohol or drugs are all commonplace within the entertainment industry and may help to explain the high rate of substance misuse among celebrities. Other people can introduce them to drugs. Perhaps there is an underlying sadness. The abuse then becomes a form of self-medication in order to cope with some sort of emotional pain, but also at times physical pain. I'm not a great expert on this topic, so I'm here drawing from the comments of others more experienced than me. In summary, Eugene Fodor was a superb, larger-than-life violinist who perhaps could and should have been even greater than he was.